Welcome to Creative Culture. My name is Steve, and this is a podcast where I scour the earth to find the world's most creative people and bring them to your ears twice a month. If you enjoy this show, please consider becoming a producer of the show by supporting the podcast over at patreon.com/creativeculture. I messed up the name of my own Patreon.
It was so good up to that point. Keep going.
I had it. It was on a roll. Patreon.com/creativeculturepod.com. You know what it is? That's just a really awkward long name because it was probably because Creative Culture was already taken or something. So I had to, I got to add the pod part to it. It's the same as the website. I've got creativeculturepod.com because creative culture, somebody wants like $20,000 or something for that. These people, they sit on these domains.
Oh, it's the worst. I've had experience with that. Yeah.
Oh my God. Let me ask a question to my audience. What do you not love about cake and icing and art? Well, Laurie Shannon, one of the most delightful people on YouTube, has combined all three of these into one amazing YouTube channel called The Icing Artist. Her videos have been viewed over 1.2 billion times. I'm kind of thinking I need to start putting icing and fondant on my furniture. Maybe I could get more views.
People like cake, man.
I guess it could be a new finish, I just wrap them up in fondant. But yeah, you know what is also pretty badass? I learned that Laurie used to be a cabinet maker. I mean, that's definitely a career plot twist right there. So we'll definitely have to get into that. But just to put this into context, Laurie's cakes aren't like those plain old flat sheet cakes you get at the supermarket where they write happy birthday on them and they usually misspell the name. These are cakes with height and dimension, maybe a princess or a cartoon character, a box of crayons, a Star Wars character, basically anything she can imagine. The best part about her videos is that she makes the art of cake decorating so approachable. And recently, she launched a course that'll teach anyone how to create stunning works of edible art in their own homes. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow, that was quite the introduction. My head just got a little bigger.
I try to inflate all egos on this show, yeah. Wow, you've been doing this for a while now, haven't you? When did you start your channel? Was it about 10 years ago?
10 years ago, yeah. And it's weird. I was thinking about the channel today and thinking about the beginning and everything. I was like, God, but that was 10 years ago. I'm in my early 30s. That's a third of my life. It's hard to remember back some of the details.
It's crazy. Does it seem like a different person when you started the show? Does it seem odd looking at those old videos?
100%. When I think a lot of YouTubers cringe a little bit when they watch the early videos, but at the same time, I feel like that's just a sign of the progress and the journey that we all take as people and creators. I mean, I've almost grown up as an adult kind of on YouTube now.
It's one of the things I like to do on YouTube channels is sort by oldest. You can look at their very first videos of a channel, and it's always interesting to see that progress. And that, to me, that's the most interesting thing about being a YouTuber is that entire arc of just starting kind of awkwardly, hey guys, I'm doing a thing. And then you can see 10 years later, it's wow, this person has got it together.
Yeah. When we were creating our course, we wanted to take a look at where we started versus where I am now and the journey. So I actually did a little rewatch of some of my old videos and filmed a watch thing for it. And it's hard to watch. I almost unlisted or took some of those videos down, and my husband was like, no, that is our history. We have to be proud of the history. It's yeah, but it doesn't sound like me anymore.
No, I'm the same way. I've been doing this 15 years now. I look at those first videos and I'm like, God, ew.
And
because I was shooting those basically for an audience of 0. And so I had no intentions of anybody ever watching these videos, I've
been watching you for, I think, 12 years. I've seen your content. Yeah. It was before we even started our channel, we were watching a bunch of different woodworking videos. I'm saying we, my husband and I, who also helps me run the Icing Artist. But we were watching woodworking videos because that's what we both did. That's how we met, was in the woodworking world. So we knew all the different creators, and it was crazy when I got your email because I had to double check. I'm like, that's not the Steve Ramsey, right? Like, I'm like, no, it's woodworking Steve Ramsey. It's that. It's him. Like, very exciting moment.
Oh, that's good. So you started watching me during those cringe years.
The early years.
So, well, but I think that right now, see, we're going to look at what we're doing right now also is cringe probably. Don't you think? Like in 10 years from now, we'll look back at what we're doing now and say, oh man, I'm so much better than that.
I
think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
like, exactly.
That's the
right.
thing. I think that if you haven't really changed, then it's not as exciting as if you have. Because I think if you can look back and be like, wow, I've evolved so much, then it's just continual growth. And I think no matter how old I am in life, I just want to continue growing as a person. We
got to get into this whole cabinet making thing. How did you get involved in being a woodworker? And you guys met doing that?
Yeah. I don't know. I was always a really, really creative person in school. I mean, everyone was taking all the sciences and stuff, and I was in drama class, I was in fashion class, I was in art classes, I was in drama school outside of school, and I was in the woodworking shop classes and everything. And I love doing everything creative. And out of high school, I didn't know what to do for a job. So I thought, hey, I heard about a cabinet making apprenticeship. Maybe I could do that while I figure out what I want to do with my life. I like cabinet making. I think it could be fun. I heard you can make good money at it. And I started looking for a company to work with to start my apprenticeship. And I ended up, after a couple different jobs, at a furniture restoration company, which is where I met my husband.
And there's a lot of people restoring furniture these days on YouTube. That's like its own genre, just restoring things.
And like the upcycling of stuff, like the things that people are doing with furniture these days is remarkable.
Do you still do any of that kind of stuff, or are those days long gone?
They're like sadly long gone for me. My husband still dabbles a little bit, but I find myself, I'm so wrapped up in this business. One day I want to get back. Like I always dream of these like little projects that would be really, really cool. Like making my own backgammon board with like really intricate veneer layer, inlay and stuff. I think that would be really fun. But I'm so wrapped up in being a cake creator right now that's pulling all of my focus.
And that's amazing. So now, do you consider yourself, I guess you can clarify this for me. You just said cake creator. I've heard the term, of course, baker, and then cake decorator. Are you all three of those? Are those each specialties within the whole world of cakes?
I think it depends. Like, I think baking is kind of a giant umbrella, right? I mean, baking could be I'm baking, scones or pies, or I'm baking cakes. So I feel like, or baking breads, I feel like that's a big umbrella. As soon as you get into cake, I think cake and cake decorating, that kind of categorizes it under the same thing. And it's hard. Like, I mean, we're still doing a lot of cake, but I still want to move more from cake and like continue into like the dessert world and foodie world.
You think your audience is willing to follow you along on that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's always interesting. I think we try different content series. That's really interesting. Like we did one where I was reviewing like the Ninja Creamy machine, was just like the viral ice cream machine on TikTok. That has nothing to do with cake, but the video did really well for us. And I want to keep kind of pushing those boundaries and seeing what kind of other content that we can make. I still love cake, but I do think like opening up to more desserts and more food just broadens our horizon a little bit.
I like the TikTok stuff you do. That's like really interesting to see. Don't you think TikTok is just like 50% garbage as far as what you see this in woodworking, these hacks, that people come up with, and it's like, this is so fake. And like the worst is like these 5-minute crafts, Oh
my God. Yes, I know.
There's been like video after video debunking these, and yet still there's like billions of people watch these videos.
Yeah, I've done some of those videos debunking some of the 5-minute cross hacks, or like testing them, being like, oh, right, yep, this doesn't work. I think that there's a lot of stuff from those like big, content farms that none of it ever works and it's just for views. But then there's a lot of really cool educational content on TikTok. And I think it depends on what you allow your For You page to be in, what hashtags and creators and stuff that you're following. Because I'm filled with like a lot of cake stuff, but then like a lot of science stuff too. So I spend a lot of time on TikTok.
So you with watching and creating?
Both. I got really into creating on TikTok, but then I felt like my focus really went towards TikTok and off of YouTube. And I felt like, okay, I need to reassess my priorities and come back and spend a little bit more time on YouTube because that's where the majority of our business is. And then
It's where you can make some money.
Yeah, like I have a hard time like splitting my focus, and it is hard. Like I'm a Canadian creator, so there is no fund at all on TikTok. So unless you can do brand deals or sell products, there really isn't any money there. But I really love creating TikToks, and I'm excited that YouTube's kind of evolved its shorts a bit to kind of play around with that. But I think short form content is very, very fun. I just hope that there's still a world for long form content.
I think YouTube is doing a pretty good job. I think when they came out of the gates blasting with the shorts, they were like, clearly, hey, we got to catch up with TikTok. But I think now it's kind of settled down, and you see this channels that are doing very well on both, because the YouTube is kind of separating those two things now. It was kind of annoying at first when the shorts would come into your main feed and people were getting like, stop it.
Yeah, I remember when I posted my first short, people being like, no, not you. Like, we don't want to see your shorts. We want your long form content. Don't switch. It's like, no, I'm not switching. This is just going to be like extra content for you guys. Yeah. You can still expect my regular content.
And so let's go back a way. So why cake decorating? And did you know when you started your YouTube channel, you had this all planned out? Like, this is really what I want to do is cake decorating. And how did you evolve into that?
I mean, planned out. I'm not sure I would say totally planned out. I'm a very spontaneous person. The whole plan of our channel started when we went on a 4-month cross-Canada road trip. And it was the kind of road trip I had to quit my job to go on so we could go on this big adventure. And while we were driving all day and thinking about coming back to a job, I didn't want to come back to woodworking. And we saw actually a video of yours where you were saying that this was your full-time job, which started us thinking about, can you create a full-time job with this? Can you make money as being a content creator, being a YouTuber? What is this? And my husband wanted to start a woodworking channel. And I was like, well, what could I do? Like, I think starting a channel would be really fun, but what could I do? And I had recently taken some cake decorating classes and loved it. So I thought, okay, why don't I do cake decorating? And I came back from the trip. I started working at a bakery full time, and then started my channel within the same month. And the whole channel started as cake decorating and is still mainly cake decorating.
Wow. And so you actually worked at a bakery, I guess, to help hone your skills a little bit when you were first starting out?
Oh, yeah. I had no idea what I was doing, which shows in my early videos. Although some days I still don't know if I know what I'm doing. I mean, I know enough about cake decorating, but I think a lot of the fun in what we do with our content is just me trying things that I don't know or that give me anxiety or that, push my limits a little bit and see what I can figure out. But when I first started, like I'm 100% self-taught. And when I first started, I had like no experience in cake decorating or baking or any of that world. I had just started my new job, which was very fun. It introduced me more into that world, but my experience was limited to taking a couple classes locally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's why one of the reasons why people love your channel is because of that relatability. Because even now with all of this experience, and clearly you have a track record of making some really astonishing looking cakes, you still have that factor of like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. And it's kind of cool to watch that and see, well, is this going to happen? And then it turns out, and I'm just kind of blown away every time I see something.
Thank you. Yeah, that's 100% my anxiety and my imposter syndrome just like coming right to the surface. But I mean, for everybody else, they watch and are like, okay, I see that mistake. Then I see how you overcame it compared to some of these other content farms that are just like, boom, and you have this magical hack that will never work. Like, I'm going to be real with people.
I think every YouTuber seems to experience the imposter syndrome. It's like, how did I get into this? It all just seems like such a weird accident that all of a sudden we're here doing stuff and kind of being the voice for certain crafts and arts.
It's super crazy because like I started without having really a goal in mind or what I was doing with my content. I just want to share a couple of the tips and tricks that I was learning and trying and figuring out on my own. And then I get comments and emails about people saying they're using my content, everything they've learned from my content, and can start their own bakery. That's insane. That is crazy.
Yeah, that's one of the greatest compliments you can get is when you have changed a life. It kind of makes you, it's humbling, isn't it? To just kind of realize, wow, I do have a place in this world.
It's also super crazy considering I started filming this in my mom's unfinished basement. So it's like this content, that's what made you start a bakery. That's awesome.
I really love this idea of ephemeral art, I guess you would call it. And I don't know if you've given, I'm sure you have, how much thought you've given to the fact that you're creating art that is so temporary. You spend all of this time creating beautiful works of art that can only be, I guess, documented in video and photography, because the actual art itself is going to be gone. And I don't know if you eat those cakes or give them away or something, but to me, it would be very difficult to cut into one of those and eat it afterwards, because they just look like they're beautiful. And it's like, I don't want to disturb it now. I put so much work into this thing.
It's painful. I mean, some cakes can be like a week of a progress between designing and doing all the prep work for it and sourcing the materials for it, and then the whole decorating of it, not to mention like filming it. But it's hard to then just like give it away or have it cut into or be in like the background of a party or something. Like I've brought like cakes that I spent days on and brought them to like a baby shower or something. And it's just as if there's like a balloon bouquet in the corner. It's like, no, I made that with my anxiety, blood, sweat, and tears, man. It's just some people think it's just like, oh, but it's just a cake. But to me, it is my form of art and creation. But that's what I really love about YouTube and just creating content, is that since my cakes are so temporary, this allows them to like live on forever. So I can go back and revisit, cakes that I made a really long time ago.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain, this kind of art falls into almost performative in a way, because you have to kind of experience it for you to experience it as it's there, or people who are seeing it in the real world, because then it's gone. And it's great to see that on video, but I'm sure it just hardly can capture everything that goes into that.
Sometimes I feel like things look amazing in person and that they weren't really captured that well in videos. And I feel like that's very hard. It could just be the color or the lighting in the room or whatever it is that day. And I find that really challenging, but it's nice that they still live on in some way and people still get the cakes. Like we don't keep any of the cakes that we have. They're all given away to friends and family, which is nice to see everyone else enjoy them.
What's the idea? You must be working under a time limit too when you're making these, right? So that it would take me like 3 weeks, and by that time half the cake would all be moldy and falling apart and everything to do some of that stuff.
There's been a few cakes like that something came up, that I had meetings, that I had crises, and I was in the middle of decorating. I was like, okay, I'll stick in the fridge and I'll get back to it, and I had to throw it out afterwards because it was a rotten cake by the end. It still looked cute, but it was not good. It was not good. Nobody's eating that cake, Steve.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Does it ever make you a little nervous after you've done such a beautiful cake that you have to show slicing into it, right? I mean, that's kind of part of the video, so you can see the inside. See, I would be nervous that okay, you double check, make sure that camera is running, make sure everything, because you only have one shot at that, right?
Yeah, that just haunts my nightmares. Especially we've had things be like lost footage where we don't know where the footage went for something, or we didn't capture something, or the battery ran out on the other camera. Like we've definitely had things like that happen, but we're always like triple checking things. But what makes me more anxious isn't necessarily getting the cutting shot, but it's something happening to the cake. Since cakes are so temporary and they're made with like things like butter that melts and things that have oils in them that can leak out, a lot of things can shift and move over time. So while I'm decorating, I'm always worried about getting it finished in time, that I can get those final shots without something going wrong. And
so you work with your husband, obviously, yep. Daniel, right?
Kevin.
I don't know why I was saying Daniel. Kevin. How was that like, being a business partner essentially with your soulmate?
For us, it works really well. I think that we balance each other really well. He's a very calm person and I'm a very anxious person. So I feel like his calm kind of helps me. But also I thrive in a lot of areas like being, super creative and working on a lot of content things, where he thrives in areas of doing really hardcore research and the business side of stuff. So I feel like we kind of complement each other's skills in that way, and we work really well together. I mean, it's not without some issues. Some days I can't come home after my long day and complain about my coworker, but it still works out really well for us.
Yeah, and he appears on camera quite often too. I like that dynamic.
He has. I've been dragging him on more and more, and our audience seems to be really, really loving it. And honestly, it makes it more fun for me. I'm sure, as you know, being a creator can be a very isolating experience when you're just talking to yourself in a room with a camera. I mean, you're talking to everyone else, and you have to think about it in that way, that you're talking to all of the people who are watching your videos. But in reality, you're in a room alone with a camera. So having him there really helps just feed off him and, lift up my spirits a little bit, especially when all the cakes are disastrously going wrong.
So does your relationship as far as working on the videos come down to like a really structured, okay, we're going to have a Monday meeting. We're going to decide what we're going to do for the week. And do you plan out all of this stuff?
I think it depends. When we do, we definitely have content days where it's like, okay, let's sit down. Here's our task list for today. And let's dive into these 4 different subjects. And other times it's like, okay, here's the list for the week. Where are we going to do whatever? And everything is just all over the place. But we definitely have these are the days that we're going to do content planning. These are the days that we're going to do filming. And we're going to go over these things. These are the things that need to be done this week. So there's some structure to it, but it's pretty flexible.
I'm sorry. I've got my gardener is out here with a leaf blower. If
is that? I can
noise
hear the
is.
little high-pitched.
This is the part that gets cut out of this audio presentation. It just drives me crazy because, my wife schedules these whenever he comes, and it's various, every week it's at a different time, different day. And then he'll just text her and say, I'll be there. And she never really knows when I'm recording, so we can't really schedule it that way. But
yeah.
This is a real high-pitched one. At least it's not like the gas-powered one, because the gas-powered ones are illegal where I live now, so you can only use. But I'm not sure if this is any better. It's just that high-pitched whirring.
I could hear it. I was like, it sounds like a saw, but I don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's like a hairdryer or something almost.
That happened during Kevin and I's wedding ceremony, actually. We got married at an outdoor venue, and everything was beautiful and calm. And then right in between our vows, just goes on the lawnmowers and everything with the company. I guess they were in more of a residential area, so their neighbors, it was just their home, and they're out there cutting their lawn in the middle of our wedding ceremony, which, I mean, it's their house, it's their prerogative. I'm like, can I just get through my vows?
Well, it could be worse. It could be sprinklers coming on during the reception or something.
That's true.
Oh man. Okay, so let's get into some of the nuts and bolts of cake making. That's probably not a good metaphor, but nuts and bolts. It would be more like butter and milk.
Sprinkles?
I don't know what it is. So, here's one of the things that I see you do that I cannot do, and I've tried this. And granted, my cake experience is very limited. You'll take a sheet cake and you can slice that horizontally through there, and it's perfect. If I try to do that, it goes all wonky, and I get this wedge-shaped piece. Or what am I doing wrong?
Oh, no, I get that half the time too. It depends. So if you use a bread knife, I sometimes am up on one side, down on one side, and I end up with that same weird wedge shape. If I have a cake leveler that holds the blade the same distance on each side away from the table, and you can kind of saw through cake that way, that is the best way that I have found. And I see so many professional cake decorators in really fancy bakeries sit there and use the serrated kind of bread knife, but carefully mark every little inch around the cake with a ruler and put little toothpicks in to mark all the things, which works great. It just takes a lot of time, and a little cake leveler just saws right through it, and I don't have to worry. So that's where I go to.
I kind of figured there'd be a tool for that. What are some of the other tools of the trade?
My favorite tool I kind of go to has been an offset spatula. I think that works for a lot of things with icing cakes. We're actually launching a product, which is going to be my new favorite product, which is an icing smoother, which is just kind of like a straight edge, almost like a bench scraper, but specifically for icing a cake. And it really transforms the icing on the side of the cake, making things easier. But a cake turntable or a Lazy Susan is a must. You got to be able to spin that cake around so you can do the sides, because if you have everything stationary, you can't get everything even around the whole cake. But that's kind of it. Some piping bags, a couple piping tips. You really don't need much.
I love that you compared that to a cabinet bench scraper.
Yeah. You scrape glue off your workbench, you know? Like that, but icing.
Exactly it. So I guess that, when I've tried to frost, okay, here's a question. What's the difference between frosting and icing? Is that a thing, or is it the same thing?
American and Canadian. That's
that what it is?
That's what it is. Because I think in America, you guys usually use frosting, whereas in Canada, we usually use icing. But like buttercream is kind of buttercream. It's all the same. So you could say frosting, icing, buttercream, and it's typically the same.
What's the stuff that you can get in those cans? I don't like that stuff. You open them up and it's just already pre-made frosting or icing.
Yeah, I think that's just frosting. I mean, there's different kinds of icing, or frosting. Like I think icing and frosting is basically the same thing. It's just another word for it. It's like tomato. But there's different kinds of icing. So there's like American, Swiss, Italian, and then usually the difference is like an American is like a fat-based buttercream. So it's just you're using like butter or vegetable shortening and just icing sugar, vanilla, that kind of thing. Whereas more like an Italian or Swiss, you're using like whipped egg whites and butter and stuff. So there's different kind of recipes when you get into the buttercream side of things. But I think, I'm not even sure what the jarred icing is completely made of, to be honest. A lot of chemicals.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I don't know if this is even really food in that thing. It's like, I don't know. It's strange. But I would imagine that it really comes down to, a lot of it has to do with like the texture and the smoothness, right? Because I've tried icing cakes and the cake itself kind of falls apart. Or that's probably a problem with the cake, right?
It could be both. Honestly, if your cake isn't structured enough and is too crumbly or moist, then when you go to smooth it out, it's just going to rip the cake apart. But it can also be the icing. So if you're using like the canned kind of Betty Crocker type icing, it's very sticky. Like if you notice and you kind of lift it up, it's not like whipped cream. It's very sticky. And when you smooth out into the side of the cake, it pulls the cake crumbs
It just
off.
ruins it.
Yeah. And it's funny because I actually just challenged myself in a recent video on if I could turn dollar store items into a wedding cake. And with that, I was using box cake and I was using jarred icing, and it was very, very challenging. And making buttercream from scratch is so easy, and it's so much tastier and has so much less chemicals and preservatives and stuff in it. So that's usually my go-to.
Is there a way to thin that out if you get that jarred icing and make it a little bit smoother? Can you hack it?
There's lots of hacks. Like I've tried, so for this video, I whipped it up so it got it more light and fluffy, so it's a little bit less sticky. I add a little bit of water to it, but I also add some more icing sugar to it, just so I can get the consistency where I needed it to be. But I've also seen people add vanilla, add salt, add butter, add so many things to it. But at that point, it's as much work as my buttercream recipe
Just make the damn stuff yourself. And so before this podcast, I asked my wife, I said, do you have any cake questions? And she said, I have one. And because I know we have had some cake disasters, and I'm not talking about minor disasters. I'm talking about full on cake just completely exploding. Like, this is ridiculous. You can't do anything with this. So she said, okay, some of the cake recipes she uses she will take a sheet cake, make a sheet cake, and then she cuts it into like 4 quadrants, I guess, and then takes each of those squares and piles them up. And she said she can never frost that cut area where it's crumbly. Like the outside part of the cake she can frost, but it's that crumbly part, she said, it just falls apart. Is it just bad frosting? It's because of that store-bought frosting, isn't it?
It's a combination. So the store-bought frosting is just going to like tear those crumbs out. But also, if you pop that in the fridge or freezer, it's going to tighten everything up and hold everything together better. So I probably recommend that, icing a cold cake. I mean, if you ice like a sort of frozen cake, like you might get condensation on your icing when it comes to room temperature. So icing it from the fridge is probably better, but you can also water down your icing when you do a crumb coat on the cake. So that's just going to lock in those initial crumbs before you do your final coat of icing.
Oh, so you would just thin it out kind of first and then just like sealing the end grain.
Yeah, so if you do a cold cake and thinned out icing and do a crumb coat, that would definitely help, but also using the right icing.
Gotcha. Okay, so now is that like a standard technique you would use, is to cut up smaller cakes to stack into a larger cake?
I think it would depend on the shape that I'm making. It also depends on like the supplies that I have. So I have basically every shape cake pan I can think of. So I don't really need to take a sheet cake and carve it down into a square cake because I have square cake pans. But you can definitely do that if you're like following the right recipes and stuff.
It's just like hard for me to imagine how you can envision like these princess cakes that you make with these flowing dresses. And are you just kind of winging it, or do you sketch something out ahead of time, or how do you know what that's going to look like ahead of time?
It's a little both. Sometimes I've just winged it and went and see how things go. And other times I've planned everything out. Everything always goes smoother when I actually plan everything out and make even a rough sketch. So like for my like twirling princess cakes that I've made, a lot of that is carving and getting the right shape of the dress. If the dress is like ballooning out too much at the sides and is making, mainly like a half oval shape, that doesn't look like a twirling gown. So I had to think about how fabric twirls. So I actually looked up video clips from like the Cinderella movie to see her spinning and actually printed out the shape of her dress spinning and then trace that as a template to be like, okay, this is the shape I need to carve my cake into.
Yeah, that was one of the techniques I saw also on another one of your videos, was to make sort of a tracing template using, I guess, acetate or something. And then you could draw on that or print out something. And then you put icing right on that and you transfer it right to the cake. Is that how that works?
I honestly don't know what you're talking about, but I also have like 300 videos, so it might have been something I did a long time ago and I've forgotten.
It might have been the crayon box one, because I remember it was like a transparent sheet that you put.
I got you. So for that, I was using cellophane wrap, I think. Cellophane. The when you do like a gift basket with gifts, that wrap.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I was using that kind of like plasticky clear wrap, and I piped buttercream on it, and you have to work pretty fast because if you're using like a crusting buttercream that has icing sugar in it, it's going to crust on the surface, which means it's no longer sticky. So while it's still sticky, you kind of transfer that to your cake and peel it off, and then you're left with the image on the cake, which you can do logos or different designs with.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. And I guess there's robot cake decorators now, right? They will like paint images actually on a cake.
That is on my content list of things that I want to make. I've seen, it's like the printing where you can do like, like I've seen that where they've done printing like on coffee, on like the coffee latte stuff. I've seen that with like nail art, and I've seen it that they have it with cake stuff too. I think a majority of what they're doing was with cocoa powder, but I'm not sure. But there's also edible printers that you can print on like rice paper that you can then just like, just an edible image. You know, those cakes that you get your face on at,
like photographs on a cake.
Yeah. There's stuff you can do like that with an edible printer, but there's actually like printing machines and 3D chocolate printing machines and stuff.
Wow.
So I want to order some of those.
Does that interest you as an artist?
Yeah, 100%.
Really?
I think anything like that is really cool. I actually have an icing smoothing machine sitting at my front door right now that is humongous that I'm excited to unpack. I think next week we're going to shoot that to see how this like giant, very expensive $1,000 icing smoothing machine is going to work.
Well, now how does that happen?
I want to know too.
I can't envision a machine that you've got like a round cake, right? And you want to smooth it around it.
It basically... Okay, here, let me think if I can explain this. Okay, if you imagine like a pottery wheel that is spinning the cake around, it basically has a mechanical pottery wheel in it, but then it also is holding a square to it that you can like push down into it and take away from it. So if you have like your square edge that you're using for woodworking to check if your corners are square, it basically does that onto the cake, making this top inside smooth while it's spinning it on a pottery wheel, I think.
Oh, so you could actually kind of almost use like, make it like a lathe or something. You could use different shapes maybe on that to...
Which I'm excited for. I want to try to like take like a couple different tools to the sides and see if I can do some like cool carving techniques or buttercream techniques on the side with it. And
you mostly do icing rather than fondant. At least that's kind of what I gather.
Yeah, I used to work with fondant. Like cake decorating, I'm sure like woodworking and every other genre of creative spaces, it goes through trends and phases with different stuff. And I think like 5-10 years ago, it was in the fondant era. Everyone used
It
fondant
did
for
seem like
everything.
that. Yeah.
And then everyone's like, right, this is gross and hard to work with because nobody likes eating fondant.
What is that stuff anyway?
God. It's like, if you make it from scratch, it's basically like marshmallows and icing sugar folded. But a lot of companies that are making it, it's like xanthan gums and different things that like, it just makes it very, very sticky in your mouth. Yeah. Some people love it. I'm not a fan. And it's hard to work with and it's very expensive. So I'm really glad that we're in the buttercream era right now.
Oh, okay. That's good to know that we're in this buttercream era because I didn't know we had already transitioned. I remember those were real popular, the fondant. Every time I would see a show on TV where they were doing some sort of decorating, and I always wondered, where do you even get that stuff? Is that available for regular consumers at a supermarket, or is that you have to?
Now most days, yeah.
Really?
Like you used to only be able to get it at like specialty cake decorating stores, but now you can walk into Walmart and like they have like a little cake section with some sprinkles and cake pans and stuff, maybe some food coloring, and you can usually buy fondant there or at craft stores, but. People don't use it. I mean, people still use it for certain things. Some wedding cakes and some designs need fondant, but most things people just use buttercream these days.
I'll tell you another disaster we had one year. This whole podcast is just me telling you about our disasters. We tried. It was when my son was little. We thought, we'll do a gingerbread house. Well, we didn't like do it from scratch. We got one of these kits, which probably. The graham crackers or whatever it was are probably 20 years old in this kit. I don't know. But it would not stick together. The frosting and the whole thing just ended up as this big blob. And we're looking, it was one of these, picture versus reality kind of things. The picture on the box was like this beautiful thing. We thought, we're going to make this. It was a blob.
Yeah, using definitely the right recipes would probably help.
Probably.
So I think like if you get those kind of kits and you've got, that would be royal icing to stick gingerbread together, which is the same icing you use in like cookie designs and stuff. But yeah, if you don't have a good royal icing, it's not going to hold anything together. We
were at Disneyland a few years ago for Christmas time. They had a huge gingerbread house there. This thing was enormous. It was all behind glass and everything. But see, that's the kind of thing you just definitely don't eat after, because you display it, right?
Yeah.
That would be really gross.
Now I want to go see that. That sounds really cool.
They do. I think it's at the Grand Californian. I think they still do it every year, but it's amazing. I don't know if it's the world's largest. I'm going to call it the world's largest because I've never seen anything bigger than that. So tell me about this course. What inspired you to come up with a course in addition to your YouTube channel?
I mean, we've been wanting to do a course for 5 years. It was something that we thought of both for like business reasons. We heard that you can have a lot of success when you're selling kind of your own product compared to just working with brands and stuff. So that was a big reason. But also I feel like a lot of the YouTube videos, we can't go into every detail of every single step and things that we're doing. So we're kind of skipping through because there's information and there's also entertainment. We're trying to make really fun videos, but we felt like a lot of people in the comments were saying that they wanted to see more of this and more of that and learn all these specific things. So we really wanted to create a course that brought all of that together for the people who really wanted to learn from start to finish everything that goes into a cake. It's funny, you were saying that, you had your picture of what you're going for and then there is the reality. And that's something that when we surveyed our audience, everyone was saying, it's just not Pinterest worthy. I'm looking at my inspiration. It looks like a distant cousin. Like it's not what it is. It's not a vibe.
It's so deflating too. When you see that and you want to make it and you think, yeah, it looks simple enough, and then it just doesn't work.
It's the worst, right? So we developed a system on how to break down all the different components of an inspiration image and then draw your own kind of inspiration from that and create your own design from that, and how to go through that process, then taking you through all of the different recipes and all the different designing details to end up with a really cool finished cake at the end.
And you're just going step by step through everything from starting with baking the cake to the design process and then the final execution.
Yeah, it's your A to Z, everything that you need to know, but then also, some photography tips in there to capture your design so you can share it on your social media and help grow your business or just share it with your family. So we tried to include as much as we could.
So that you can be the one posting the pictures that people are trying to copy.
Yeah, exactly. You'll be the new inspiration.
You'll be the inspiring one, right? So what would be the very first step a person would take who had no experience with cake? I'm basically talking about myself.
I would definitely start on something like Pinterest and just looking at some different designs that inspire you. I think it'd be the same thing with like a woodworking project. Like if you think you want to make something like a blanket box, let's say, you're going to look up a bunch of different pictures to figure out what's doable and then see where your skills are at and what tools you need to do it. And start there and just have your inspiration board. And then usually from there, I pick 1 to 2 things that I really like from different cakes and start drafting up my own design for it.
So in your course, what's the name of the course? It's
From Basic Baker to Buttercream Queen.
Yeah, see, that's what I want to be. A buttercream queen.
You could be it, Steve. You could be a buttercream queen. I'm telling you.
I'm on board for that. So what would be the like day one in that course? What does a person learn?
So day one, you're going to go through like all of our bonus resources that take you through a full cake design workbook, all of our recipes, our tool shopping lists, different things like that. And then that's going to take you into our intro videos and finding your inspiration design and designing your cake before we get into our recipes.
And the recipes would be for both the cake and the icing and everything.
Also fillings. We go through like easy, delicious fillings to really level up your cakes. I find that for years, I just put buttercream in the middle of my cakes because I didn't have the time and didn't know what fillings to use. So this is about breaking down some of those barriers that people have, those fears that people have of I don't have the time or I don't know how to put together these different flavors. And we give different recipes and different inspiration of things that people can do with that. And then it's the troubleshooting guide on everything to avoid. I mean, I spent 10 years learning cake decorating. So this is like all those newbie mistakes that I made and how you can avoid them.
Tell me like top 3. What are the top 3 mistakes people make?
Oh my God. Definitely leaning cakes. So you're saying like you're carving your cakes. That is a thing. Everybody has that. You are not alone. So that's definitely a big one. And people not crumb coating their cakes and just going right into the final coat. Then you're going to get crumbs into your icing. You're going to get air bubbles. It's going to be all sorts of problems. And also
the crumb coating is that kind of thin layer that you were talking about, right? A thin down
like the
icing.
Thin layer that you put on the outside of the cake that's going to lock on your crumbs before you put the final coat.
Gotcha.
And then definitely the third one would be the consistency of people's icing. If you have too thin of a filling or too thin of icing, everything's just going to slide around all over the place. You're just going to have a big wobbly mess.
I think one of my favorite cakes you made, and this is just me, was your like zombie head cake for Halloween.
Oh, no, that's my favorite.
This went back a ways. That thing was awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite. Funny story. I put that in my freezer because I made it like weeks before Halloween. So I wanted it to stay good for a Halloween party. And my brother didn't know that I had made a zombie head and put it in the freezer and went down like late at night, midnight trying to get some ice cream or something. And it very much startled him. I got a scolding about that cake.
He's like, oh my God, Laurie has a secret life I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Putting heads in the freezer.
I mean, when you're going to go get a big jar of ice cream, you're not really expecting a zombie head to be staring back at you.
Well, that sounds great. It sounds like, is your course doing well, selling well? Is it meeting your expectations?
I think it's been a struggle at the beginning. We have just launched it and we're trying to figure out the marketing of it and making sure that we have like everything the way it needs to go. But the feedback has been incredible. Like every single person who has bought it has absolutely loved it. We've only had like beyond our expectations feedback with it. It's just trying to get it into the right hands and everything. But it's hard. I mean, we started talking about this course and marketing this course a year ago, and we ran into a lot of different problems along the way. As I'm sure as you know, you made a course. It can be a complicated process.
It's a long process,
It's a long process. So we're still in the process of figuring some things out. But it's honestly a project that I'm the most proud I've ever been of something.
Yeah,
we're really proud of everything that it is. And I'm glad that so many people love it.
Totally get that. Yeah. I remember I contacted you a while back and you're like, yeah, I'd love to be on the show. But right now I'm in just knee deep in this course. And I'm like, oh, I totally get that. Once you're in there, it's like, God, that is, because it is so much work. There are so many things that go into these online courses that, I mean, there's some people who just throw up a couple of PDFs, but when you're actually creating content and video and all this special step-by-step and coming up with a complete program, it's huge. And I don't know if people understand, and a lot of times, the difference between that and the YouTube channel. You know, there's like two completely separate things.
Oh yeah, they're miles different. I mean, especially even just like developing the curriculum of exactly what we're teaching and making sure all that information is in there. That was just months. That was months of us reading through comments. That was months of us looking through our survey answers and trying to think back and watching my old videos and being like, right, here are all these other things that I really struggled with. So how can we include all of these tips in one spot with a course and do it in a way that's going to make sense for everybody? Because sometimes it can be information overload. It's hard to take everything in and walk away and feel like you understand stuff. So we really wanted to focus and make sure that we weren't just throwing every little bit of information at people, but in a consumable way that they could actually walk away.
Are you thinking about doing a second course, like next level or something, or is it
I
too
would
soon?
I would love to. My dream is to create like the online school of Icing Artist. You know, I think that would be very, very cool. I'm hoping that this course is just the first of many, but it's been a learning process, as I said. But I'm really proud of not just like the end product, but of the journey that we went through to get it to where it is.
Yeah, well, it's a big effort. Do you have any other dream projects you have in mind?
I want to start like an online e-commerce store, both with just like curated items that I really love, but also creating our own products that I felt like don't really exist and aren't exactly what I need, but I think we can improve on them. And we're launching our icing smoother in the summer. So I'm hoping that that's just like the first product, like the course, it's the first product of hopefully many more.
The icing smoother, that's the one that's like the cabinet scraper.
Yeah.
This isn't the robotic icing scraper.
No, not the big $1,000 icing smoother machine that we're not making that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's always good because once you're involved in this stuff to a certain extent, then you really start to realize the shortcomings of certain tools, and it gets very frustrating. And so at some point, you're probably just like, damn it, I'll just make one myself.
Yep. I mean, I've had ongoing lists for years, probably 6 years of just lists of different tools that I want to make, problems that I see that I want to solve with products and stuff. And I'm excited that we're in a place that we can hopefully finally start doing some of those.
Yeah. And your YouTube channel seems to be going really well. God, you've got like, I don't know, what, 4.5 million subscribers, something like that? That's crazy.
Something like that.
Good for you. Wow. And you get
you.
pretty good views on all those videos and everything. So it's a real success story on its own.
Yeah, YouTube's been a bit of a roller coaster. I mean, we've had ups and downs through the last 10 years, but somehow we've been able to stay on the roller coaster and keep riding it. So that's kind of my hope for the future. But I feel very lucky that our channel is in the position that it's in and that we've had the kind of the success that we have.
It's kind of all you can do, right? You just ride that roller coaster. Everybody I've talked to, every YouTuber said the same thing. There's those ups and downs, and there's times when you're doing really well, times when you're making a lot of money, times when you're not, times when you're getting a lot of views, times when you're not. It's just, you have to stay the course, I think.
I mean, we almost gave up a few different times. There was 2 times in particular that we almost closed the channel because it was just things weren't working. You just hit a wall. There was different changes that came to the platform, different changes with algorithms, or we were grinding away for so long and felt like we weren't getting anywhere with the channel. But we adapted. I think you just got to keep changing and adapting with content and with who you are as a creator and growing. You can't stay the same. Because
that's so true. Yeah.
There's a reason that, Game of Thrones is an epic show, but it's only so long. I mean, every great, series has to come to an end at some point. But you have to keep adapting and changing. You're not going to watch the same episode every single week. And that's the same with being a content creator. At least that's how I've always looked at it. So how can we do the next biggest, craziest thing, or do something different or revolutionary or funny, or, try to hit on different things that I want to do or that I think people want to see.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think that you can always identify some of the older YouTubers who are still doing the same thing that they were doing, 10 years ago or whatever. And it usually doesn't work. And it's important to stay on top of the trends and whatever's happening and just try new things, because the platform changes all the time. We have to change with it. It's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, honestly, it's in those stagnant periods where I feel like I've hit a wall where we're not really going anywhere that I found coming out of it the most amount of success. Because it's like, well, nothing's doing well anyways. We might as well just do some random content that we want to make and see what works.
Yeah.
What do we have to lose? And through that, found some of our favorite series.
Where would you like to see your channel headed, over the next few years?
I love traveling. So it is always my dream to create more traveling foodie content of trying, really cool, interesting things and interesting desserts, different restaurants and stuff from all around the world. So I think that's definitely a big series that I want to put in. It's just very
that'd be
expensive.
Fantastic.
It'd be amazing, right? It'd just be very expensive.
Well, yeah, it's a good way to do your trips tax deductible, though.
Yep. That's why I keep telling
my
Still have
to pay for them. Yeah. Yeah, it is good. That'd be fun to see, desserts around the world or something like that. I would like to see that. You could start with Canada. What are the desserts people are making in Nunavut?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
See?
I love that, actually. That sounds awesome.
I don't know. It's probably fish related, I'm going to guess, but I don't know. Laurie, it's been delightful talking to you. I wish you all the success with your course, and hopefully you have some more courses down the line.
Thank you so much. And thank you for reaching out and having me. It's been great chatting and connecting, especially since I'm a longtime fan of your channel and what you're doing. So thank you for helping inspire me.